The Galactic Nexus was a marvel of interstellar diplomacy. A sprawling space station where dozens of civilizations, each more advanced than the last, had come to form alliances, broker peace, and discuss matters of universal importance. The delicate hum of energy shields, the constant undercurrent of data flowing through the station's core, and the high-ceiling chambers designed to accommodate beings of every shape, size, and culture were all part of the environment Alicia Reyes had come to understand over her years as humanity's top diplomat. But today was different. Today, the delicate web of diplomacy was about to snap. Captain Alicia Reyes sat at the head of the human delegation, her eyes scanning the room of high-ranking representatives from various alien species. The chamber was filled with voices, each one more desperate than the last. A proposal for peace with the Sirid Empire was on the table, but Alicia knew better than anyone that it was nothing more than a trap. The Sirid Empire, under the ruthless Emperor Tkarin, was not interested in peace. They had been waiting for this moment, the moment when humanity, through the Galactic Council, would finally be broken. "I find it troubling," Alicia said, her voice cutting through the buzzing room like a blade. "That in all of these discussions, not once have we heard a true desire for peace. Only demands. Threats cloaked in promises." A hush fell over the room. For a brief moment, all eyes were on Alicia, and she could feel the weight of their gaze. Some regarded her with admiration, others, with suspicion. The Galactic Council was an intricate web of politics, and the moment you disrupted it, you risked everything. But Alicia had never been one to back down. "Humanity has no desire for war, but we will not sacrifice our sovereignty or bend to anyone's will," she continued, her eyes locking onto the Sirid representative, a towering, armored being named Jorkan. His yellow eyes glinted with something dangerous, something Alicia knew all too well. "Your arrogance is what will lead to your destruction, Captain Reyes," Jorkan snarled, his voice like gravel scraping across stone. "You cannot hope to stand against us. The Empire is vast, and we are more than capable of annihilating your people in a matter of days." Alicia's lip curled into a small, tight smile. "The Empire may be vast, but your greatest weakness is your arrogance. You think because you control vast territories, that you control everything. But you underestimate us. You underestimate humanity." The tension in the room escalated, the air thick with the promise of conflict. The other representatives shifted uneasily in their seats, some eyeing Alicia, others exchanging whispers in their own languages. The council was divided, each faction silently calculating their next move. Some had already made their decision: they would side with the Sirid Empire, eager for the wealth and power the Empire promised. Others, more hesitant, watched with curiosity, unsure of how the next moments would unfold. "Enough!" The voice of the Galactic Council's chairman, an ancient being known as Xylus, rang out. His elongated, translucent form shimmered in the light, the ancient creature's power unmistakable. "Captain Reyes, your position is noted, but this meeting is not the time for such confrontations. We are here to discuss a possible ceasefire, not to escalate tensions." Alicia stood from her chair, her body stiff with resolve. She had no intention of letting the council sweep this matter under the rug. This was more than just a peace talk, it was the survival of humanity that hung in the balance. The Sirid Empire had been waiting for this very moment, biding their time, planning a strategy to undermine humanity's growing influence. If she allowed them to manipulate the council, Earth's future would be sealed in chains. "You all know what this is," Alicia said, her voice rising, commanding the room's attention. "This is not peace. This is capitulation. We are not here to negotiate our future, but to survive." Jorkan scoffed. "You speak of survival, but your actions speak otherwise. You humans are weak. You may have survived the darkness of space, but you will not survive the might of the Sirid Empire. Not now, not ever." Alicia's eyes narrowed, her gaze unwavering. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her. This wasn't just about tactics, it was about showing the galaxy that humanity had teeth. That it wasn't going to be bullied by the might of an ancient empire, no matter how vast their fleets were. "I'll tell you what I'll do, Jorkan," Alicia said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I'll tell you exactly what humanity will do. We'll walk away. We'll walk away from this farce. Because this isn't a peace negotiation, it's a slaughter waiting to happen. And humanity will not be slaughtered. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Representatives from various species exchanged looks of shock and disbelief. The idea of a human standing up to the Sirid Empire, letting their pride slip, was unthinkable. Xylus's eyes widened, and his voice trembled with the weight of the moment. Captain Reyes, you cannot. I can, she interrupted, her voice resolute. And I will. Humanity does not bow to threats. If the Council is too weak to act, then we'll take matters into our own hands. If you want to turn your backs on us, then so be it. But know this, we will never submit. She turned to the rest of the Council, her gaze sweeping over the varied species. And you can all make your choice now. Either stand with us in defiance of the Sirid Empire, or turn your back on humanity. With that, Alicia turned on her heel, walking out of the room, leaving behind the stunned silence of the Council chambers. Outside, her aides were waiting for her. They had no words, no comforting phrases, just a solemn understanding of the path they were about to walk. The weight of Alicia's words would echo across the galaxy. The Council would have no choice but to react, and the Sirid Empire would not take kindly to being defied. As they moved toward the waiting shuttle, Alicia felt the cold pulse of anticipation fill her chest. This was not the end, it was the beginning of something much bigger. The galaxy would soon know what humanity was truly capable of. The humans were done begging for peace. Now, they were going to fight for it. Alicia Reyes sat in the darkened war room of the human flagship, her fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on the smooth surface of the holographic table before her. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the hull, a constant reminder of the war that was now upon them. They had left the Galactic Council behind, leaving the fragile peace talks in tatters, and now, humanity was facing the full brunt of the Sirid Empire's wrath. The news had spread quickly. News feeds across the galaxy were ablaze with rumors and reports of the human delegation walking out of the Council negotiations. Some reported it as a victory, a bold move to stand up against the Empire's tyranny. Others, particularly the Council members who had hoped to avoid war, condemned it as an act of reckless defiance. But Alicia knew better. This wasn't a victory. It was the beginning of humanity's fight for survival. Her eyes flicked over to the data stream projected in the center of the room. The Sirid Empire's fleet, one of the largest in the galaxy, was moving fast. They were mobilizing at the borders of human space, preparing for a full-scale invasion. The sound of footsteps drew her attention. Lieutenant Varric, her trusted second-in-command, entered the room. His face was grim, the tension in his shoulders evident. "We've got the first wave on sensors," Varric said, his voice tight. "The Sirid fleet is within range, and they're moving fast. They'll hit our outer colonies in less than 20 hours. Alicia stood and paced the length of the room, her mind racing. The Sirid Empire was not known for mercy, and their war tactics were brutal. If they attacked the outer colonies, it would be an unmitigated slaughter. Hundreds of thousands of human lives would be lost in the first wave alone. "Status on our fleet?" Alicia asked, turning to face Varric. "We're still in the process of mobilizing. The outer defenses are weak, and many of our ships are still on standby. But we have enough to put up a resistance. However, we'll need time." Alicia's jaw tightened. Time was the one thing they didn't have. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice cold with resolve. Varric hesitated for a moment before responding. "We could attempt to evacuate the outer colonies, but that would take precious time, and it might not even be enough to save everyone. The Sirid fleet is too fast, too overwhelming." Alicia nodded. The odds were stacked against them. They were up against an empire that had been building its war machine for centuries, while humanity had only just begun to recover from its early space explorations. But humanity had something that the Sirid Empire couldn't understand: determination. Alicia had seen it firsthand in the resistance fighters, in the soldiers, in the civilians who refused to lay down and die. Humans weren't just survivors, they were fighters. "No evacuations," she said firmly. "We'll fight. We're not going to run. I'll call for a fleet-wide alert. Get every ship in position to defend the outer colonies. Let the Sirit know we won't fall without a fight." Varric's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect passing between them. "Understood, Captain." As Varric moved to relay the orders, Alicia stood alone in the war room, her mind swirling with calculations. The situation was dire, but she knew this was their only chance to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The Sirit Empire needed to understand that humanity was not a species to be crushed, that they would not be intimidated into submission. If they wanted war, they would have it. And humanity would make them regret underestimating them. The first shots were fired less than 8 hours later. The Sirit fleet arrived at the outer colonies with brutal force. Alicia's fleet was still gathering, but they were ready. The human ships, though smaller and less advanced than the Sirit's behemoths, were agile, quick, and driven by the indomitable will of their crews. The battle began in the cold void of space. The Sirit ships descended upon the colonies like a storm, unleashing waves of firepower on human defenses. The sky above each colony lit up with explosions as the first lines of defense were shattered. The human ships, despite their size, moved with precision, weaving through the larger Sirit vessels, firing back with everything they had. Alicia's flagship, the Unyielding, cut through the chaos, a lone spearhead in the storm. Her officers barked commands as they launched counterattacks, trying to hold back the overwhelming force of the Sirit fleet. "Captain," Varric's voice came through the comms, "we're holding them off, but not for long. The outer colonies are taking heavy casualties." Alicia's eyes flashed with a mix of determination and anger. She had promised the colonies they would be defended, and she was not about to let them fall. But the reality of the situation was clear: they were fighting an empire built for conquest, while humanity's military might was still in its infancy. "Send in the reserves," Alicia commanded, her voice resolute. "We're not backing down. All ships, prepare for a full counteroffensive." The human ships surged forward, attacking in tandem, as the battle raged on. Alicia's mind raced with strategy, calculating their next move. She knew they couldn't hold back forever. But if they could force the Sirit Empire to spend valuable resources, delay their advance, and show the galaxy that humanity would not be a passive target, it would buy them the time they desperately needed. Hours passed. The battle had become a bloodbath. The outer colonies were burning, but humanity's resistance had forced the Sirit Empire to commit more ships to the fight. The human fleet was losing ships, but they were also inflicting damage. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And that something was all Alicia needed. "Captain," Varric said, his voice strained, "the Sirit are regrouping. They're preparing to launch a final assault. If we don't break them now, we'll lose everything." Alicia glanced at the tactical map. The Sirit's final assault was coming, and it would be their most devastating push yet. But she had one last gambit in mind. "Prepare the last-ditch offensive," she ordered. "We're going to strike their command ship. If we can disable their fleet's central control, we'll throw them into disarray." The crew sprang into action. As the human ships charged toward the Sirit command vessel, Alicia's heart pounded. This was their final chance. If they failed here, humanity would be at the mercy of an empire that had no mercy. "We're on approach," Varric said, his voice tight with anticipation. Alicia took a deep breath, her gaze locked onto the view screen. "Make it count." The human fleet engaged in a last, desperate push. Laser fire exploded around them as they closed in on the Sirit command ship. Alicia's fingers danced over the console, activating the weapons systems. "Target locked," she said, a cold fire burning in her chest. Fire. A massive volley of plasma energy shot toward the Sirit flagship, and then boom. The explosion was deafening. The Sirit command vessel shattered, its massive hull breaking apart as debris scattered across space. The Sirit fleet faltered, disoriented without their command structure. In that moment, humanity's forces hit with everything they had, driving the Sirit back. Alicia watched as the last of the Sirit ships retreated. The battle was won, but the cost had been immense. Humanity had made its stand, and they had won the first battle, but this war was far from over. She let out a long breath, her gaze softening. They had proven something to the galaxy today. Humanity would not be crushed. Humanity would fight. The war raged across the galaxy. The outer colonies had fallen, but humanity had not yielded. The battle against the Sirit Empire had only begun, and though the human fleet was battered, Alicia Reyes was resolute. She watched as her ship, the Unyielding, navigated through the wreckage of the battlefield. The remains of the Sirit command ship still floated in the distance, the debris a constant reminder of the cost of their victory. Despite their success, the galaxy was not at peace. Humanity had made a stand, but it had come at a high price. Thousands of lives lost, entire colonies reduced to ash, and their fleet severely damaged. Alicia knew they couldn't afford another fight like that, but the next battle was inevitable. The Sirit Empire would return with a vengeance. "Captain," Varric's voice crackled over the comms, breaking her from her thoughts, "we've detected a massive fleet gathering at the edge of the system. It's bigger than the first wave. They're coming." Alicia's jaw tightened. She had known the Sirit wouldn't back down. It wasn't in their nature. They were an empire forged in the fires of conquest, and they would stop at nothing to crush humanity's defiance. "How long until they arrive?" she asked, her voice steady. "At their current speed, they'll reach us in 5 hours, Varric replied. 5 hours. Alicia had little time to prepare. But in those precious minutes, she would need to do everything in her power to rally the remaining forces and make sure humanity wasn't caught off guard again. She walked briskly toward the communications center, where a team of officers was working tirelessly to gather intel and coordinate the defense. She needed to speak with them all, make them understand that this wasn't just another battle. This was a war for humanity's future. A war that could determine whether they would survive or be obliterated. "Lieutenant," Alicia said as she approached one of the officers, "I need a full breakdown of our defenses. Every ship, every colony, every outpost. What's left that we can rely on?" The officer turned to her, his face drawn and tired, but his eyes burned with determination. "We've got a few fleets still intact, Captain. But we're spread thin. The outer colonies took heavy losses, and the remaining ships are scattered throughout the sector. We're not in a position to mount a full counteroffensive yet. The Sirit fleet is too large." Alicia's mind raced. She knew they couldn't win a conventional fight with their current resources. The Sirit Empire's forces were too massive, their tactics too refined. But humanity had one advantage, an advantage that no one else could claim: ingenuity. They were the underdogs, always had been. But they fought with a fire that the Sirit had yet to understand. "We're not going to fight them head-on," Alicia said, her voice calm but resolute. "We're going to force them into a position where they can't ignore us. It's time to get creative." The officer's brow furrowed, and Alicia could see the doubt in his eyes. "Creative? Captain, we're outnumbered. How are we supposed to make them come to us?" she interrupted, a spark of something dangerous in her eyes. "We lure them into a trap. A choke point where they can't bring their full strength to bear. We'll use everything we have, our agility, our speed, and our ability to adapt." The officer hesitated, but then nodded. "Understood. I'll send out the orders. But we're going to need a lot of luck for this to work." "We don't need luck," Alicia said, her voice hardening. "We need to show them that humanity fights smarter, not harder. We need to make them underestimate us." As the officers scrambled to implement her plan, Alicia stepped back and looked out into the vastness of space. The enemy was coming, and there was no turning back. But humanity had fought wars on their terms before. And they would do it again. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The remaining human ships, though outnumbered, were repositioned in a way that would give them an advantage. The Sirit fleet was coming at full speed, unaware of the trap being set for them. Alicia had to rely on every ounce of her tactical genius to pull this off. Every moment counted. As the hours ticked down, the tension in the war room mounted. The entire crew was on edge, aware that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Alicia could feel the weight of it in her bones, but she didn't show it. She couldn't. Not in front of her crew. They needed her to be strong. They needed her to lead. 5 minutes until they're in range, Varric's voice crackled over the comms again. Alicia nodded, her mind still focused on the strategy they had devised. "Hold steady," she said. "The moment they break through the outer line, we engage." Her fingers hovered over the console, ready to give the order. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The human ships would lure the Sirit fleet into a narrow channel in space, a place where their superior numbers would count for less. There, the human fleet would strike with everything they had, using guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and anything that could destabilize the Sirit's overwhelming advantage. But as Alicia prepared to give the command, something unexpected happened. The Sirit fleet slowed. Their ships, vast and formidable, began to spread out, forming a wide formation instead of charging directly at the human position. "They're changing course," Varric said, confusion lacing his voice. "They're not going where we predicted." Alicia's pulse quickened. This wasn't part of the plan. The Sirit weren't just attacking, they were adapting. They had anticipated the trap. "What's their new vector?" Alicia demanded. Varric's fingers danced over his console, but the delay in his response was telling. "They're not heading directly for us, Captain. They've split into 2 groups. One's pushing toward the outer colonies again, while the other is heading for Earth." Alicia's blood ran cold. Earth. The heart of humanity. The place they had fought so hard to protect. "They're going to strike Earth directly," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've realized we'll fight for the colonies. But Earth is where we'll break." "Captain, we don't have enough time to." "I know," Alicia said, cutting him off. "But we can't let them get to Earth. Prepare the fleet for immediate redeployment. Get us in position to defend the planet. Now." The urgency in her voice was unmistakable. If the Sirit Empire reached Earth, all their efforts, all the sacrifices, would have been in vain. The heart of humanity would be at their mercy. But Alicia wasn't going to let that happen. The battle for Earth began the moment the Sirit ships arrived in orbit. Their first wave struck with terrifying force, their weapons tearing through humanity's defenses. But Alicia's fleet was already in position. The remaining ships, though battered and outnumbered, fought like cornered animals. They weren't just defending Earth, they were defending their way of life. Alicia watched as her fleet engaged the Sirit forces, her heart hammering in her chest. The odds were still overwhelmingly against them, but she refused to yield. Humanity would not go down without a fight. And in that moment, as she gave the order to engage the Sirit fleet, she knew one thing for certain: humanity would never be crushed. Not as long as there were people like her, willing to fight for their survival. The remnants of humanity's fleet limped through the black void, battle-scarred ships scattered among the wreckage of the most recent clash with the Sirit Empire. Despite their bravery, the cost had been staggering. Every ship that remained had been battered, and every survivor had faced the impossible. But Earth was still standing. For now. Alicia Reyes stood in the war room of the Unyielding, her gaze fixed on the fleet's command console. The Sirit Empire, after their brutal strike, had withdrawn momentarily, regrouping and licking their wounds. But they would return. And when they did, humanity would face them again. It was only a matter of time before the next wave hit. "Captain, we've got another message from the Sirit," Lieutenant Varric said, his voice tight with barely contained frustration. "They're demanding we surrender. They're offering a ceasefire, but the terms are clear. Humanity must kneel. Accept our terms, or face complete annihilation." Alicia's jaw tightened. She already knew the response she would give. It would be the same response she had given every time before. The same response she had given when humanity first decided to fight. No, she said simply, her voice as cold and unwavering as steel. We won't surrender. Humanity doesn't kneel. Varric nodded, though his face betrayed the exhaustion they all felt. We don't have much left. How long can we hold out against their might? Alicia's eyes flicked to the map before her, where the scattered remnants of humanity's fleet were slowly being reinforced by the few ships that could be spared. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But what they had left, they would use. I don't know, she replied. But we won't give them the satisfaction of seeing us break. Alicia turned to face the rest of her officers, each one at their station, their faces just as weary as hers. They had fought hard, lost many, and the battle had only just begun. The Sirit Empire wasn't just attacking humanity, they were trying to break them. To make humanity doubt themselves. To make them feel powerless. And that would never happen. Not while she still breathed. We won't give them Earth, Alicia said, her voice rising in defiance. We've already proven they can't break us. Now it's time to show them that humanity will never, ever surrender. Prepare the fleet. We're going to make them regret underestimating us. She turned to Varric. Coordinate the remaining ships. We're going to need every last one to buy us time. Get the word out, we fight, not because we have to, but because we refuse to let them take our home. Earth is ours, and we'll protect it. Varric nodded, his expression resolute. Aye, Captain. The fleet was ready to face the Sirit again. But this time, it wasn't just about surviving. This time, it was about striking back. Humanity wasn't going to let itself be the victim in this war. They would make their stand, no matter the cost. As the Sirit fleet came into view, the tension in the air was palpable. The massive warships of the Sirit Empire moved with the slow precision of a predator stalking its prey. But this time, humanity wasn't running. This time, they had a plan. And they would use everything they had left to make sure it worked. Alicia stood in the command center of the Unyielding, watching the fleet take position. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, every moment crucial. The enemy's ships were vast, but they were slow. They relied on overwhelming firepower, but that could be used against them. Humanity's fleet, smaller but far more agile, had the advantage in speed. And that would make all the difference. Ready all weapons, Alicia ordered. Once they're in range, we hit them hard. We don't let them set the pace. We make them chase us. Her voice was steady, calm, but beneath it was the intensity of someone who had come to terms with the fact that this might be their last fight. There was no fear in her, only purpose. The fleet was ready. It was time to show the Sirit that humanity would not go down quietly. Captain, Varric's voice came through the comms, we've got the Sirit on our tail. They're locking onto us. Alicia's fingers gripped the armrest of her chair. Do they think they've won? She muttered under her breath. Let's show them just how wrong they are. Bring them to me, she said sharply. The first barrage hit with the force of 1,000 thunderclaps. The Sirit fired their massive guns, and the human fleet dodged, weaving between the blasts as if they were performing a deadly dance. Humanity's ships weren't as powerful, but they were fast, agile, and able to use their size to their advantage. Alicia watched the battle unfold before her, the bright flashes of energy lighting up the dark expanse of space. She could feel every impact, every shake of the ship as the weapons hit their mark. The human fleet responded with precision, returning fire with every weapon they had left. They were outnumbered, but they were not defeated. We're taking heavy hits, Captain, one of her officers reported. Hull integrity at 75%. Alicia's eyes never left the battle. Hold steady, she commanded. We're not done yet. The Sirit fleet advanced, pushing their advantage, but every move they made was met with humanity's relentless resistance. The fleet split into smaller groups, hitting the Sirit where it hurt, using their speed to strike and retreat, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to land a decisive blow. We're wearing them down, Varric said, his voice steady even under the pressure. Their formations are breaking. They're starting to panic. Alicia could see it. The Sirit Empire's perfect organization was beginning to falter. The coordinated movements, the intimidating formations, were breaking apart as their forces became scattered, their focus splintering. Humanity was pushing back. And they weren't just surviving, they were fighting back with everything they had. Alicia turned to her fleet's tactical officer. Target their engines. We take out their mobility, and we end this fight. The officer quickly keyed in the command, sending a volley of high-powered shots at the heart of the Sirit fleet. The impact was devastating. One of the Sirit warships faltered, its engines rupturing in a burst of fire and debris. The Sirit fleet, momentarily thrown off balance, hesitated, and in that split second, humanity struck. The remaining ships in the fleet launched a final, coordinated attack, hitting the Sirit where it hurt, at the core of their command structure. "We've got them," Varric said, a note of triumph in his voice. "They're retreating." Alicia allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The battle was theirs. But it wasn't over. The Sirit Empire would regroup, they would come back. But humanity had just proven something. They weren't just a species to be trampled. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Prepare for the next wave," Alicia said, her voice calm once again. "This is just the beginning." The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they would never be broken, that they would fight for Earth, for their future, and for each other. The next wave would come, and they would be ready. Because no matter what the Sirit Empire threw at them, humanity would never surrender. They would fight. Always.